This past Monday, my coworkers and I returned to our hotel from a day of work out in the field. Rebecca and I walked to our rooms, and as we stood outside of our rooms, I opened mine, and I thought I had saw someone in the bathroom. So I said, "Hello," and nobody answered. My first instinct that it was a cleaning lady in there for some reason, and then I saw my bag with my clothes in her hands. I said to my coworker, "There's a Roman in my room." Then I asked the woman, "What are you doing with my stuff?" It gets a little fuzzy here, because I can't remember everything I said and what she said, but she kept mumbling about how her high key still worked. I was like, high key? But then she meant to say her key still worked, and how it still worked, and that's how she got in. Anyway, I was in shock, and she was obviously very flustered having been caught mid-robbery. She dropped my bags and fumbled around with her purse and a white plastic bag. By this time, my coworker was behind me watching all the insanity unfold. This woman was scrambling and walking towards the door, and I said, "What's in the bag?" Thinking it is probably my stuff, and she says, No, it's just my things, and I'll show you." And so she did. I looked and I didn't see anything of mine, and so since I'm obviously in shock at this time, I let her go. I went into my room and it's been ransacked. I did a quick look around to see if anything had been taken. All of my electronics were still there. Then, I went into the bathroom and I saw my underwear, my bikini, and my clothes shoved into my own bags randomly. Even my passport was shoved in there. Then I looked on the counter, and I saw that she had gotten into my medication. I'm not sure what was going through my head at the moment other than I wanted it back, so I ran out the door to chase her. I ran to the laundry room downstairs and out to the sides of the hotel, and I didn't see her. I realized I was never gonna find her, so my coworker and I went down to the lobby to tell them what happened, and then we called the police shortly afterwards. We went back up to my room to wait, and I noticed that there is a metal bat on my bed. You know, a little larger than those novelty wooden bats you can get at a baseball game. There was also a flashlight at the end of it. She must have left it behind in her hurry. She also left behind a necklace that must have fallen out of her bag when she was scrambling with mine. I was mostly freaked out at this point because I thought she had gotten away with my medication that I needed. The police got here, and she took our statements and looked around the room as well. One thing I noticed was that there were bits of drywall in the sink, and I pointed that out to the cop, but none of us really knew where it came from. We started looking at the door and the windows to see if she pried her way in somehow, but there was nothing. So we kind of just went with the idea that she had a spare key or something, even though the hotel front desk was adamant that there's no way that could be. The officer came to bring more 2 officers in as backup because they thought the woman might still be in the vicinity. But after our statements were taken, there was nothing else that they could really do, so they left. I sat down to finally make some calls to tell people, and as I'm on the phone, I just kept thinking about that drywall and the sink, and it still didn't make any sense to me. So I'm on the phone, and I got up to check the drywall and the mirror on the wall right above it, and then it hit me. Realization had actually hit me. I got my coworker and I asked her if she could help me pull at this mirror on the wall. And we took the mirror down, and there was a huge hole just big enough for a desperate junkie to squeeze through. I asked Brian and Rebecca if I should call the cops again to let them know that I found this, and my boss said, "There's still 2 cop cars out in the parking lot." So I went down to tell them, and the female cop kind of rolled her eyes, but the young guy said, "I'll come check it out." They both came back up there, looked in the hole, and they found a pillow, some blankets, some cigarettes and clothes, and some toothbrushes. This woman had been living in the wall behind my mirror for who knows how long. She had access to my mirror in my room at all times. I know it might be hard to picture, but there was a crawl space about 2 feet wide in between the 2 rows of my room. one of the officers called the original officer to come back and take the pictures of us. She explained to him what's going on, and all I hear over the radio is, "No freaking way." He comes back, takes pictures, and just as mind blows as the rest of us. Anyway, obviously I pack up and I left immediately. Or shall I say, we packed up and left immediately. What's even crazier is that she probably had been there for a long time, because the last time I stayed at this hotel, I would randomly smell cigarette smoke, and I assumed someone was smoking in their bathroom, but it was, traveling through the vents. She had access to the other rooms too. The holes in the walls were from a renovation, and the hotel hadn't properly patched. They just covered them up with mirrors. She could have been hanging out in people's rooms when they were gone. Anyway, this is all aside, and I'm taking a little time off. The next photo I'm going to show you is the picture of the hole in the wall that the user had posted on Reddit. My friends and I decided to go camping one spring break. We had planned a week in advance, and as the day got closer, the weather got worse. It was cold and gray and unheard of for Arkansas. Anyway, the night finally came along with yet another cold front. It was in the 30s, but we had dressed warm and stocked up on whiskey and beer. The plan was to hit a spot my buddy knew, which was barely accessible with his 4x4. We wanted to really camp in none of those designated sites for families and seniors in RVs. So we aimed away from civilization, which was only made up by a single stoplight and a couple hundred people, and then we drove into the woods. After 30 minutes of bone-rattling dips across dry creek beds and detour roads, it started to rain. By the time we found camp, it had turned into hail. The spot was marked by an ancient dirt road a few hundred feet along and the rotting carcass of a VW bug. That night was spent passing a bottle around, hoping we'd figured out the tents before we were too drunk. Eventually we did, and managed to start a fire with diesel. At this point, the hail had stopped. The empty whiskey bottle lay broken in the fire, and we had a decent pile of empties growing. We drank, we played cards, we passed out in our tents. Anyway, the next morning, I gradually regained consciousness to the sound of something large being dragged past my tent. It was what it looked like to have once been a station wagon, stripped and rust-covered, dragging the VW with a chain. The VW had been there for so long that the floor had rotted out and roots had tied it to the forest floor. They lay scattered in the wake of the wagon. A woman was driving. A man beside her and 3 shirtless kids sat in the back where there used to be seats. The man stared out the window away from us the entire time. The children had dirt smeared on their faces, which illuminated their glassy 1,000-yard stares. It's the look of crushing poverty, and you've probably only seen it in the pictures. It exists in war-torn countries, the projects in inner cities in the deep south, so deep that the old gas station back in town, a place you'd probably jokingly hum the Deliverance theme, that was a city to these people. She spoke in a deep nicotine and whiskey-soaked drawl. "Y'all coming from the city to do some camping?" "Well, reckon that's fine, as long as you ain't doing no drugs." "Y'all ain't doing drugs, are ya?" "We weren't." "Just drinking then?" "Well, I like a drink now and then." "Anyway, you seen them black helicopters flying around? Them's some boys that work for me, see? This is my land, and they told me. Can't be too careful. Figured I'd best check it out." She started laughing. Mucus bubbled up to wet her dry cackle. The man stared at nothing. One of the children put both hands on the window and gazed through us. His mouth hung open and spit cut a line through the filth on the glass. He was probably around 10 years old. "Y'all know Bethany?" We did. "Ha! Everyone knows old Beth. Y'all go to church? I lied. Good. Ain't got time for that. You know, for those who don't fear God. Why don't you come on to church tomorrow? You can meet Bethany. It's just over that hill up there. Can't miss it. Boy, she'd sure like to meet y'all. They all would. We assured her we would. She drove away into the trees, slowly dragging the VW. As soon as she left, we all looked at each other and started laughing. It was just nerves. There wasn't anything funny about it. We all have the remnants of a primitive warning system for danger. It's been eroded by living safe and civilized, but every once in a while it goes off and you obey it without a question. Something is wrong. It started before she spoke, when I looked into her eyes. Something is wrong. The kids, the man, her laugh. Something is wrong. Eventually we did hike up the hill. You could see for a mile. There was nothing. No buildings, no clearings, just forest. We cut our trip short, packed up and left before noon. So to start, I'm a girl in her early 20s from the rural Midwest. This past deer season, I have a scary experience that I think you'll all like to hear. So let's jump into the story, shall we? So, if you've ever have done much hunting, you know that oftentimes you wake up early and head to the tree stand before the sun comes up. It's not bad waking up that early actually, because you're generally so stoked to go hunting you don't even feel that tired. On that morning, I went through my usual routine, woke up around 4:30 a.m., showered with scent control, washed and dried myself off, all that. Put my clothes on, checked my rifle, loaded it, and was out the door. I had to hike good ways to get to the stand, and it's slow going because even though you can't shoot at the deer that early, you still don't want to spook them, so you don't have to be quiet and walk slowly. I get close, so I turn on my flashlight and start making it to the base of the stand. I thought I heard a branch or two crack, which was a good welcome sign. Also, this tree stand isn't like the metal frame one-seaters. In fact, it's more of a tree house, a platform, with 4 guardrails and camo canvas stapled to the rails. So I have a room for a nice chair up there. It's still dark in a hole before I can shoot, so I lean back and start taking a short nap. I doze off fairly quickly, and I know I'll wake myself up in time for the early morning sun. It must have been 15 minutes or so since I had dozed when I hear rustling. It's still not shooting time yet, but it's early enough that I can see almost well enough, so I start looking around. I don't see anything, so I write it off as squirrels. That's when I hear it. A big thud coming from the base of my tree stand. I was looking out the front at the time, so I spun around to the rear where my ladder is set. It's still dark, but sure enough there's a man who I can clearly see on the ladder. I didn't know what to do besides tell him what the heck and raise my rifle. The guy just stood there, looking at me, with wild eyes. His hair was unkempt and he smelled horrid. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. I was locked in a staring contest with this dude for probably 10 seconds with my rifle raised at my chest. At this point, he starts making weird noises that were really like a mumbling giggle. I've never heard a human make those sounds. I've always told myself if I point a gun at someone, that's when they are going to die. My reasoning is that if I feel the need to use such force to protect myself, the threat is dangerous, enough to eliminate it completely. But with all those scenarios I've run up in my head, it's always been something like being attacked at knife point or home invasions where I have my pistol. It felt incredibly odd to be pointing my rifle at a person who was just standing there. Finally I said, "What are you doing?" But no response. I got a little more aggressive and yelled that he was trespassing and that this was my property and that he had to leave. He took another step up, so I warned him one more and I would shoot. He just stood there. He picked up his foot to take one more step and I fired. But I didn't shoot him, which was very stupid for some reason. But I didn't shoot him. If anyone has been near a 30-by-6 without hearing protection when it goes off, they'll know it's loud. even though I was prepared for it. The sound still shook me every time I fired without hearing protection in my ears. I can only imagine what it did to this guy. Luckily, out of shock, fear, or a combination of both, he dropped from the ladder. He was rolling on the ground, clutching his head for a few seconds. When I got up and ran like a maniac through the woods, I filed a report and installed more security cameras, but nothing came of it. And I'm sorry to tell you, but this is where the story ends. I mean, it's really not much of it. And I would just like to say that if anyone out there decides to go camping or stays at a hotel or decides that they like hunting or something like that, you guys always just, be careful and watch out. Thanks for listening. I'll be back on Friday with another good video.